I didn't see you there. Today we're going to be going over how to paint your guns. We've got a whole new range of camo paints in, and we've got a Boneyard MP5 here, as well as one of my personal guns, and we're just going to quickly go over some different techniques, tips and tricks for painting with all these new camo paints. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so the first thing to consider when you're painting is having the right equipment and having everything you need. So, we've got our entire range of paints in OD green, earth brown, black, and a tan sand colour, as well as obviously masking tape for masking off anything you don't want. And then I've also got some meshy fabric sort of stuff and some plastic sort of mesh as well for creating patterns. Some other great stuff you can use is like laundry mats, obviously anything natural like leaves or ferns to create patterns, or you can cut your own digital camo out of tape with an X-Acto blade and cut shapes to do a digital camo paint job. And then for actual stuff I'm going to be painting today, I've got an optic just to go over some tips and tricks for painting your sights. This is a Boneyard MP5 that we're going to just be painting up for a display unit to show off some of the paint jobs, and then my personal rifle, and I've got a magazine. Highly recommend grabbing a mag when you're painting stuff so you can put it in the mag well just as a sacrifice one. This one's obviously already been painted a couple times, and that way you can protect any paint from getting into your internals. Sweet, so let's jump right into masking it off. So, kicking things off with the MP5, obviously being a Boneyard it is missing some bits, but I'm still going to mask off a couple parts that I obviously don't want to get paint in. Some important ones on every rifle I think you should make sure to mask is obviously the barrel, any threads for suppressor or muzzle attachments, anything that's going to move like a charging handle, if there's any markings to do with safe, semi and auto, it's great to mark them off. Motor plate adjustment and the screws down here, and obviously around your trigger and mag well. So just anywhere where you wouldn't want the paint to get, so we're going to get right into that. Alright, so we've got it all masked up here, covered the motor plate, covered the front sights, trigger, fire selector modes, the sling plate and the charging handle, as well as the threads in the inner barrel, so that the paint's not getting anywhere it doesn't need to be. I'm just going to avoid the mag well on this one. Obviously it is Boneyard, it's never going to shoot again. Something to note while we are talking about masking up and obviously everything is if you don't know what you're doing with an airsoft gun, we don't recommend painting them. If you want to get your gun painted up, talk to your local club guys who know a thing or two about airsoft guns so that you know you're not going to get paint anywhere that's going to possibly damage it. And if you want a perfect paint job, you can pull your gun all to bits, and if you want to know about how to pull a gun to bits, leave that gun in the comments and we can do a video on it. But I'm of the opinion that at least when I paint guns, I like them to look sort of semi-worn and just sort of more realistic, where they don't typically strip them down, they'll just mask them off like this and paint them all up. So that's how we're going to do it today. I'm going to be starting off with a base coat of our desert sand and working from a light base coat and adding some darker colours on top. Obviously that's easier than adding light colours on top of dark for when you're painting. And then the last thing to note, obviously, make sure to shake your cans up well so that your paint is nicely mixed, and be doing it on a surface that you don't care about and in a well ventilated area. So don't be doing this on your mum's kitchen counter and ruining that. So make sure, yeah, you go outside, grab a bit of old wood or some newspapers, definitely not your mum's favourite magazines either, and then you can get to painting once you're all masked up and ready to go. So I'm just going to be holding the can about 10-20 centimetres away. Long broad strokes as we do the base coat, and I'm not going to be too worried if we miss anything. The other thing to note is this gun, at least for the paint job, I'm going to be doing a few different colours, and I also want it to have a bit of a worn look, so I'm not going to be going super heavy. If you ever see, we'll chuck a photo up of all those cool Spec Ops guns painted up in, you know, tans and stuff, and they're typically worn away as well for that lived in look so they don't look pristine. You can achieve that by doing a lighter coat, so that's what we'll be going for today. Sweet, now we'll set aside that to dry and we'll jump on to the next one. Alright, another mistake a lot of people make when they're painting their gun for the first time is painting optics. You've got to be a wee bit more careful than painting guns, obviously. The parts are a lot smaller and there's also a lot of information that's obviously lasered onto these that you will lose when you spray paint. So you've got little details like your plus and minus on your focus, what magnification you are on an LPVO like this, as well as the numbers on the turrets for windage and side to side, and then obviously your colours as well if it's a powered optic. And then on red dots, so we've got a small red dot on the top of this, you also need to consider where your emitter is. So not just covering up the glass, but also the emitter, and again, any sort of important markings on the sides of it. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to cover up anything like adjustment wise, so that in the future, if we do need to zero this, we still have those numbers there to do it. Awesome, so as we paint this, just let's go over some of the benefits. So obviously, the added one is camouflage and it looks cool. It's going to not stand out quite as much as a black against obviously if you're wearing a kit of the same color or if you're in a forest. Typically where I use this kit, it's in a pine forest, so the ground is covered in pine needles and the trees are obviously earthy brown colors, darker, so you don't want anything light that's going to stand out, but also black, especially standard black from most manufacturers, does stand out and shine quite a bit. So this paint is not only non-reflective, it's also anti-corrosion, so it's going to help protect your gear when you paint it, and then obviously it's going to prevent, especially in low light scenarios, standing out in games because your gear is shiny in the moonlight or in the sunlight. So that's one of the benefits of painting it. And then obviously, yeah, you do need to consider your environment you're going to be playing in. If you play majority in a light tone area or in a greeny area, go for green colors, but pine needle forests, I find a lot of browns are naturally there, so that's going to help you with camouflage. Obviously avoiding the bottom of the rail where it's going to mount on the gun, and just going for some very light weak coats. Awesome, we can set that aside to dry now and check back in on the MP5. Alright, so now that we've got some base coats done on our example MP5, you can see that we actually have gone for a tricolour. So this is going to just give us an opportunity to practice out a lot of different colours and patterns on this rifle, so that we've got a demonstration and an example of everything you can do with the different colours. So we've got the base coat down now, and I'm going to try out doing some patterns on one side of this so that we can see some of the different stuff you can do. So I think I'm going to go for a black over this OD green and see how that looks, and then we'll see what we do for tan and sand as well, or brown and sand, sorry. So for when I'm doing the patterning, I'm taking this fabric and I'm wrapping it tight. This, you'll see that it is going to mould to the shape, and that's going to create quite a nice effect once we paint it. Now, when you're doing these patterns, depending on how vibrant and solid you want the pattern shapes to be, you're going to want to hold it closer or further away and apply more or less. Because this is black, it's going to be quite harsh. I'm going to hold it quite far back and just do a very light dusting, so we just break up that solid green colour we've got on this dot. Alright, and then we can remove that pretty much straight away to prevent it from sticking. And you can see we get that cryptic sort of block pattern. Now if you want that to be lighter, you can go even lighter, as you see, sort of towards the front, or darker as you can see towards the back. So let's try out something similar with the tan over the top of this brown, and we'll use this plastic mesh wrap as well. For this one I'm going to try a more spot camo, and we'll see how it goes. So you can see there, quite simply, we can put some stripes in, and those stripes also have a little bit of pattern. I am getting a lot of speckles. You could probably avoid that by making sure your nozzle is nice and clean, and also the distance you're holding it away will affect that as well. For this camo, if this was my gun, I might also now take that and go over it with the brown again, and just lightly dust it so it's not quite as bright as that sand, but I do like the contrast of the two colours. So I'm going to give that a go right now. So you can see that kind of gives us a more subdued look, helps tidy it up, and then you just get that sort of ghosting effect of the pattern coming through from the lighter colour above to the darker colour. So finally, I think we'll probably chuck for the sand one, maybe a brown over the top, and we'll try a slightly different dropping pattern with the sand. And again, because this is our first time painting it and we don't know what we're going to do with it, I'm just going very lightly to practice out the patterns and things. The great thing with painting is you can always sand this back or strip it off and redo it again, obviously, and you really have a blank canvas. Let's have a look at what that looks like. So you can see I went for a couple different of brightness of the pattern. I might actually just add a little bit more in there, but you can see how you can sort of contrast that versus the whole gridded out pattern on the back of the stock as well. So there you've got heaps of different options, obviously different materials, you can also achieve different patterns. If I had some leaves on hand, I would show you off how to do a really natural leaf pattern with this, but obviously it's just down to whatever you can get your hands on and whatever camo you want to look for. And then you can even, obviously, more than 2 colour patterns. Can chuck some OD on there as well, see what it looks like. Obviously we're just playing around, experimenting. It can never hurt. There's no real wrong answer when you're doing camo, because obviously the more chaotic it is, typically the more natural it's going to look. You don't want it to be a rigid pattern. So you can see just like that you get a sort of old school desert camo with the greens and the browns in there. I got a little bit of overspray on my other pattern, but that's no issue because at the end of the day this is just a sample and it's just practice to show off what you can achieve. But there's a few different camo patterns that you can do with the puff dino paints. Now we're moving on to the final project of sort of showcasing the paints, which is going to be my personal Kythera. So it's built inside of a GNG Wild Hog body with some SHS and PTS externals on it. So because this is HPA, I'm really not too worried about it as long as I keep the trigger and the obviously hose / fill connection all marked up. Could remove the fill extension just as easily, I'm just being lazy, and obviously the inner barrel. Other than that, I'm really not worried about this. There's no trades on it because it's obviously just a standard Combat Machine 2.0 body, and there's no stuff on there that I'm worried about getting paint on. So I'm probably going to do a really light base coat with the earth brown to match the scope we've just painted, and then we'll go from there. I have removed the front and rear irons. Obviously with an M4 it's a lot easier to remove stuff, and just for the sake of my stock still being adjustable, I'm going to leave the buffer tube. Some people do it, some people don't. It's going to scratch off no matter what. I'm just choosing, because I typically do run it only about that far out, I'll just leave it how it is. So I got the mag in there, got the trigger all masked up, obviously dust cover's closed, so there's nothing that's going to get on the internals. So let's get this base coat on here now. When I'm painting this, I'm not going to put a bunch of paint on the pistol grip. Because it's just going to wear off, because that's the main point of contact I'm going to have with the rifle anyway. Just hold it. And same with like the butt pad, obviously being rubberized, the paint's not going to stick very well, and it's going to end up coming off anyway as I shoulder it. If you're really concerned, you could tape up your like front and rear body pins. Because I'm not doing a very heavy coat, I'm really not worried about that. Also, if you can't be in a well ventilated and like windy area like we are, obviously we've got open air above us, definitely remember to be wearing a respirator with this stuff. And even if you are, you really should. Obviously it just makes it hard to commentate these. So now we've got the basic brown tones down, we'll shut that down to dry and we'll see how it goes.
I can smell the solvents off it.
Yeah, we should probably leave that outside.
We could probably leave that for another fucking while.
That's also probably along with me. Looks cool though. Yeah. So now that we've got the base coat on the scope and the rifle, we're going to go on to doing some light patterning and just sort of tidying touch-up work. So I'm actually going to install the scope, that way I can get a cohesive pattern over the whole thing. Only reason I wanted to paint the scope separately was just to ensure that I didn't get any, when doing the heavier coat, I didn't get anything on the actual glass of the optic itself. So obviously with the dark desert colours, I think I'm going to go for a very, very light addition of this sand tan over it to get that sort of desert look. But I'm going to do it from nice and far away so it's very light, and then I'll probably also go over it with a black as well, just to add some extra depth, because I don't think there'll be much light colours where I'm going to be playing with this. No rhyme or reason with this, I'm just trying to go for a random patterning effect to make it look nice and cohesive, natural, and obviously also cool, while also keeping it light on there, because I do want this to eventually wear back so it looks nice and worn and battle hardened, as it were. So you can also do fabrics and stuff. I don't recommend it, but if you want to camo out your stuff, I actually did this chest rig first as my first practice, my plate carrier. So you can see it's got the OD green and then it's got some blacks and tans over the top of it as well. Finally, now that I've done that with that pattern, I'm probably just going to have a look at what this will look like. Can't hurt to give it a go. Awesome. Well, I think personally this is done. The only other thing I'd probably do to it for style points is just weather it more. You can do that by rubbing it, scratching it up with some sandpaper, or just playing with your airsoft gear, believe it or not. So we're going to chuck that out to dry for now, and we'll see you guys for the final results of everything. Okay, that does conclude our video on the Puff Dino camo paints and how to paint your stuff. So if you are interested in these, we stock the 4 different colours separately, or you can get them in a bulk discount deal of all 4 colours in a pack together, and you can do something like this. If you have any questions, queries about how to do it, don't be afraid to hit us up on our socials or on our email. Obviously be careful when you're doing this, make sure you're doing it out of view of the public, make sure you're being careful what you're painting so you don't damage anything, and if you've got any questions, don't be afraid to consult us or someone who knows what they're doing. And most importantly, get out, have fun playing airsoft, be safe, be conscious of what you're doing, wear eye protection, and have a good time. Thanks guys.